It's a brand new year of the Parsha podcast. It's Parshas Bereishis, and this is a very special recording because it's Sunday morning. We almost never record this early in the week, but alas, it's a festival week, and Tuesday night when we typically record, well, that's a festival, so we have to get it out early, and it's not just Sunday morning, it's actually travel day for me because I flew in from Canada back to Houston this morning. We spent the first days of the festival up north, and I had a bit of an unpleasant encounter with the government this morning because I'm traveling. It's the festival of Sukkot. I'm traveling with my lulav and esrog. And when you go there, you have to declare, I'm taking a citrus fruit into the United States. And they look at it, and she said to me, I'm sorry, I have to take away your esrog. But it's okay. You could still have the branch. I said, no, lady, you don't get it. I need all four of the species, the lulav, the esrog, the hadassah, aravos. And I kind of think she also misread the government guidance because she said, well, if the port of entry is south of Baltimore, I have to take it away. Well, I was entering in via Canada. I was doing the customs there. Either way, she decided to take it away from me. And I was judging her favorably that maybe she was disgruntled because of the government shutdown. She wasn't being paid. But over the course of the first days of the festival in Canada, my brother-in-law told me he always buys two esrogs, two citrons. And one of them is just for him to use. And the second one, that's the decoy. That's when you give it to the government. This is my citron. Okay, you're welcome to go. I thought it was wonderfully hysterical when he told it to me, but I kind of wish I had done it myself. But this citron will not be forgotten. It's a citron that will live on in our memories. Now, for one reason, of course, is I had the great privilege of using this citron, this esrog, for the mitzvah for 4 days. But I also learned an important lesson from this esrog, because we're flying to Canada, and it's very complicated to take these items on the plane. You put them under, you put them over. It's very difficult to transport them. So my father-in-law told me, he says, listen, I'll get you a lulav, the palm branch. I'll get you the hadassah, the myrtle branches, the aravos, the willow branches. But the esrog, the citron, you're on your own. So we arrived in Canada last week on Sunday, right before the festival. And there's a store. It's a pop-up store. Travis esrogs. Not named, of course, after the great Texas hero. Travis. I walk into Travis, and there are people there with the loupes and the special magnifying glasses, and they're examining all the citrons, all the esrogs. Some people have been working on assembling their four species, their lulav and esrog, for weeks and weeks. But of course, we have a custom. My grandfather used to say, we first finish with the four species of repentance, the four components of repentance, and then you move on to the four components of the four species, the arba minim, the lulav and esrog of Sukkot. So it's the night before the festival, and I go to the pop-up shop, Travis, and everyone is examining all the available citrons. And I told my son who was with me, I said to him, these esrogs, they're so beautiful that if even one of these was available 200 years ago, it would be talked about for years. People will write poems and hymns about it. But we, of course, have the luxury of having it flown in from Morocco or all these other exotic places, and you get, crates and crates and crates of them. We have access to such wonderful, pristine mitzvos. Our Torah scrolls, you compare a modern Torah scroll to an old one. The old ones are really big and hard to read, and the writing is imprecise, and the parchment's not so white, and the new ones are just wonderful, and our mezuzahs are wonderful. Our tefillin are made with every possible upgrade. But I told my son, there's a big difference, because today we have all these perfect mitzvos, but we have much less of a heart. We don't have that commitment and that devotion and that relationship with Hashem that our antecedents have. Anyhow, we're in Travis, esrogs, and I walk around. I was there for a very short amount of time. I pick up one, and it was just perfect. I needed 3. So I got 1. I got 2 more. I negotiated with the Travis people, and we bought 3 citrons. They wanted, you won't believe how much money they wanted for 3 citrons. It's 3 glorified lemons, right? But no, it's a citron, which means it's not a lemon. And it's the only fruit that you can use to fulfill your mitzvah. For 3 fruits, they wanted $750. Now, granted, that's Canadian, so it's a little bit less, but still, $500. I said to them, I've never paid more than $100 for an esrog. They said, okay, $110 a piece. So I ended up paying $330, but I was in and out like a ninja, and wonderful, beautiful esrog. And then Thursday morning, we're praying, and we're up to the Hallel, which is the part of prayer that we shake the lulav and esrog. And suddenly I felt this groundswell, this upsurge of pride in my heart. I'm holding this pristine esrog, this pristine citron. And it was just amazing. I had no problems. It was so fast. I walked in, I was in and out. I got the nicest one. Everyone worked so hard to find theirs, and I got it fast and easy. I just had this swelling of pride. And as we're praying, I noticed that the rabbi of the synagogue, he was shaking his lulav and esrog with great fervor and great devotion. Now, how do you shake the lulav and esrog? Well, what you do is you shake it 3 times, there and back, there and back, there and back, 3 times in 6 directions. So front, right, back, left, up, and down. So if you do the math, every time you shake the lulav, which you do multiple times in a single day, in a single session, it's 36 different shakes. Because it's really 3 back and forth, 6 in 6 directions. So how do you shake it? So the way I always did it is that, well, you extend it, you bring it back, you shook it. Very basic. I noticed that the rabbi was shaking it in a very beautiful manner. He extended the 4 species, and he gave like this big jerky shake, and then he brought it back, and he gave a second big jerky shake, and once again this vibrant jolty shake, and then back in with another jolty shake. And I said to myself, that's just a better way to do it. And I have this perfect citron from Travis. I got the perfect Travis citron. I'm going to do it. I'm going to copy him. I'm going to mimic him. So I decided next time there's the opportunity to shake, I'm going to do it like he did it. So I did it with the big jolt, out with the big jolt, in with the big jolt. And then a catastrophe happened. A citron debacle, a citron fiasco. When I gave it that nice, jerky, jolty shake, the top of the citron, that little stub, the pitum as it's known, it got caught up in my talus. And then I extended it out for the extended shake, decapitated. I have this glorious citron that I got like a ninja from Travis Citrons in Canada, and now it's decapitated. And it was right after I was filled with pride and joy. I beat the system, and right after I decided to mimic the rabbi's shaking method, what do? My citron is beheaded. Now, thankfully, the law states that any day following the first day, you could still use a beheaded citron. It's still valid. But I think it's a message from Hashem. It's a message from heaven. I wasn't sure what the message was because I had 2 possible messages. Right before that happened, I was swelled with pride. Maybe the lesson is not to be too prideful. But also right before, I decided to mimic the rabbi's shaking motion. Maybe the lesson is not to simply mimic what other people are doing. Don't just copy mindlessly. You have to find your own meaning. Don't mindlessly mimic. But either way, this now decapitated citron is property of the U.S. government. It's been confiscated. It's lost, but it's not forgotten because we have these wonderful lessons. I still have to find one today. I just I just arrived here in Houston. I woke up really early this morning, and I slept a little in the plane, but I just arrived. So when I'm done over here, we're done recording this maiden episode of Year 10 of the Parsha podcast. I'm going to go try to find another citron. Just have to fulfill the mitzvah today and tomorrow. It's important for us to talk about, before we start, the events in Israel. As you know, there was a ceasefire agreed between Israel and its enemies. And as you know, every year, with the help of the Almighty, we release a new episode of the Parsha podcast, but we also like to re-release the rebroadcast from many years ago on Sunday, and the episode from 2 years ago, we do that on Tuesday. So this is year 10 of the Parsha podcast with the help of the Almighty. So each week, please God, on Sunday, we will re-release the rebroadcast, which covers the entire Parsha. And then on Tuesday, it's the episode from year 8. And I like to, give it a listen before I re-release it, and, edit it, re-edit the old episode. 2 years ago, Parshas Bereishis, that was the first episode that was released after the horrific, brutal massacre of October 7th. It's been 2 years. And now, thank God, it seems like there's a ceasefire that is tolerable from our side, most importantly because all those hostages, those poor souls who have been living in hell for 2 full years now, they're all going to be released. And that's something to celebrate. And when I heard the news, we made the blessing, Baruch Matir Asurim, thank you, Almighty God, to release those who are in captivity. Of course, those people have lots of trauma, and many of the hostages being released are no longer alive, which is, of course, very tragic. And as far as I understand, there's some bodies that are unaccounted for. So, yes, we have to be happy and we have to celebrate the return of the hostages and the end of the war under these conditions. It's still, of course, very sad and tragic. I know some of my more hawkish friends were hoping to finish the job and are not thrilled with this agreement to conquer the land that's rightfully ours, resettle these Gazans elsewhere, reestablish Jewish sovereignty in Gaza, resettle Gaza. That's not going to happen as of now, but it's important to remember Israel is still maintaining 53% of Gaza territory following this initial pullback. No further withdrawals in this phase. I think it's the right decision. I think it's something to celebrate. We have a friend over here, a dear friend of ours in our community here in Houston, whose cousin is a hostage. And as far as I understand, his name is Eitan Moore. Eitan Avram ben Efrat. As far as I understand, he is believed to be still alive and to be released in the next, few hours. So it's a tremendous celebration. We hope that this is the end of all the sorrow and suffering, and everyone, our people, can be encouraged and be revitalized, and those who are in pain to have their pain remedied and healed, and those who are suffering with trauma should have that healed, and please God, there'll be peace and stability and security in the land. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast, and I was looking back at some of the recent years. 5, 7, 8, 1, we did the A and Q, and the next year was the exquisite insight, and the next year was to raise your IQ, an idea and a question. And then we had Dad, deep and deeper, and this past year, Torah is your ID, an idea and a dilemma, and this year, the theme of 5, 7, 8, 6 of year 10 of the Parsha podcast, it's the Parsha backstage, the story behind the story, the inside scoop, the privileged information. And the idea is to focus on some of those subtleties that you read it once, you read it twice, you have a familiarity, you may have missed it. And to try to see some of the secret ideas, the secret connections, the deeper insights to give us a more complete appreciation of the profundity and the perfection of Torah. And we're going to need our help for Parshas Bereishis, because as you are well aware, the first Parsha of the Torah, it's the first Parsha, the first book, it's unanimously agreed upon to be the most difficult Parsha. You read about Genesis, and you have all of creation in one verse, the first verse. There was the creation of heaven and earth. Heaven, well, that's all the upper spheres. Well, the lower spheres, they're known as earth. God created it all. And if you just read one verse in the Torah, you may be intrigued. The heavens, tell us more. Tell us more about the heavens. Give us the details. The first verse of the Torah addresses the heavens, and we find nothing else. In the ensuing 5,844 verses, the Torah's focus narrows after one verse. Thenceforth, the focus will be solely on the lower spheres. Chapter 1, with one verse, we have the entirety, the generality, and then we have the whole chapter talking about the details. 6 days of creation of the lower spheres. The animals, the birds, the fish, the water, the dry land, the light, the darkness, the sun, the stars, the moon, and of course, humanity, mankind. And if you read just chapter 1, you'll say, well, tell me more about those animals and those birds and those fish and the water and the light and the dark. But the focus of the Torah narrows yet further. After one chapter, we no longer hear about anything else in the lower spheres. From chapter 2 and on, the focus of the Torah is Adam, is mankind, is humanity. In chapter 2, we get more details about the creation of Adam. He's created as dust from the earth. Well, that's his body. And then God, so to speak, blew into his nostrils the soul of life. And Adam is placed into the Garden of Eden, to guard it and to work it. And he's given the instruction, you can eat from all the trees of the garden, sans one. San one. The tree of knowledge, Eitz Hadas, Tov V'Ra, that you must not eat from. And we have a long description of Adam giving names, proper, fitting names to all the animals. And Adam is given a wife. It's not good for man to be alone. I will make for him a partner, a spouse. And Eve is crafted as a partner for Adam. And then we read about the wily serpent. And he seduces Eve, and she eats from that forbidden fruit. And she gives to Adam to eat as well. And this terrible sin in the garden, it alters mankind dramatically. Their eyes are opened. They realize that they are naked. They become bearers of the Yetzer Hara. Within them, they have a force propelling them, encouraging them, goading them, seducing them to do bad. They are very significantly reduced in stature. They're cursed. And they're banished from the garden. The garden is protected thenceforth with a flaming, swirling sword, barring entry to all but the worthiest. Ever since then, it's the hope, it's the yearning of all to try to figure out how we can undo what Adam did, how we can reverse his sin and the concomitant curses thereof. And we're still working on it. We read about Cain and Abel, a spurned sacrifice. Cain is upset, is despondent, is depressed. And that leads to the first homicide, the first fratricide. Cain is marked, Cain is punished. Eventually he has a rather dramatic death. Adam and Eve bear a third son, Seth. And we read about his line all the way to Noah. The Parsha ends with the decline of humanity. With the exception of Noah, humanity is spiraling into inextricable sinfulness. Humanity was in need for a massive shakeup, for a massive refresh. Now, it's important to share the following idea. Of course, we know that the Torah has infinite depth. It's as broad as the land. It's as deep as the sea. It's vast. It's endless. And there are so many dimensions. There are 70 facets of Torah. And Rashi just tells us that there are 4 different realms of interpretation, known as the Pardes, the Pshat, the simple understanding, the Remez, the illusion, the allegory, the Drash, the homiletical interpretation, and of course, the Sod, the hidden interpretation. You could have dozens of interpretations, hundreds, thousands, I don't know, infinite, on each level, on each one of these 4 dimensions. So when we're trying to understand Torah, we have to understand there's a lot there. It's infinite. And Rashi, he's always our go-to, and he himself writes multiple times that his intention is to focus on the pshat level, meaning the simple understanding of a verse. You have a verse, the Torah is telling you something. What is it? What are the questions we have to answer? And what are the insights that we have to share to make this understandable? Now, what Rashi does, he takes the manifold different commentaries from the Midrash, from the Talmud, and he identifies the 1, the 2, the 3 that most conforms to the pshat, to the simple understanding, and that's what he shares. My grandfather, blessed memory, used to train us that when you read a comment in Rashi, and it seems very far from the simple interpretation, you have to understand that Rashi, the great commentator, the great curator of the Midrash, of the Talmud, he selected this as the most simple interpretation. Because there are some verses that there's no way to avoid going into the depth in order to understand the verse even simply. And my grandfather, blessed memory, used to say, Parshas Bereishis, there's no way to have a simple interpretation that avoids plunging into the deeper, into the more mystical, into the more Kabbalistic realms. You think about it. We have 6 days of creation. Is there any way to explain that simply? We have the light. Day 1, there's light. In our universe, every light must have a source, like the sun. Well, the sun appears on day 4. So where's this light from day 1? So, of course, Rashi tells us it's the hidden light. It's a light that was too good, and God put it away, hid it for the righteous in the future. That's not simple at all. You read about how the earth was empty, was desolate. There was darkness on the face of the abyss, and the Spirit of God was hovering on the face of the water. That's a very early verse in the Torah. Go explain that to me simply. Man is created in the image of God. Explain that to me simply. You have the garden, and the trees in the garden, and the tree of life, and the tree of knowledge, and the 4 rivers that emanate from the garden. There's no way to understand any of these themes simply. Adam's test, Adam's sin, the temptations of the serpent, Cain and Abel, the entire Parsha is a riddle wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. It seems totally impenetrable. One of the foundational books of the Kabbalah is a book called Tikkunei Zohar. It's an entire book on one verse. Which verse? The first verse of the Torah. Our sages tell us that everything is included in the word Bereishis. This Parsha is complicated, but that's okay, because we have a pass. We have a pass backstage. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast. We're going backstage into the Parsha. So let's begin. The first word of the Torah, if you look at it in a Torah scroll, you'll notice something odd about it. The first word is Bereishis, and it has 6 letters. And one of those letters is different, meaning it has a different size font. The first letter in the Torah, the Beis, the Bet of the word Bereshit, or Bereishis, is enlarged. It's one of the 11 enlarged letters in the Torah. The first letter in the Torah is the letter Bet for the word Bereshit, the enlarged one. Why does the Torah begin with the letter Bet, the second letter, not the letter Aleph? Is that a question that would bother us? It has to start with some letter. The word Bereishis, well, that's a fitting word to start the Torah with. Why not the letter Aleph? That's a question that would never bother any one of us. You open up the Midrash, and the Midrash addresses this question at length. Why does the Torah begin with the letter Bet, the letter Beis, the second letter, not the first one? To us, that's not even a question we would ask. And we don't understand, like, what is the significance of the letter Bet versus letter Aleph? And the Midrash gives a variety of answers. Well, if you look at the letter Bet, first of all, you'll notice the way it's shaped. It's like an inverted C, but more boxy, with a little appendage coming out of it. That's probably the worst way to describe it. So think of a horizontal line, and then on the right side of the horizontal line, there's a vertical line, and then there's another line, so like three sides of a square, but then, and the left side of the square being empty, and then on the bottom right corner, there's a little appendage coming out of it. So if you look at the letter Bet, it's open on only one side, on the left side. The right side is all closed. Top is closed, bottom's closed. Says the Midrash, the Torah starts with letter Bet because there are other things outside the scope of the Torah. What are those things? Of course, one thing not included in the Torah, as we shall see in a little bit, is the full understanding of God. That's beyond the Torah. God created the Torah. You'll find answers to everything in the Torah besides for that. Well, what happened before the world was created? What's above us? This is Kabbalistic literature or Kabbalistic terminology. What's above, what's below, and what is before? All those things are boxed out. There's only one place to go, to the left, which Hebrew, of course, you read right to left. That's the Torah's way of saying there are things that are beyond you that you are not allowed to probe. And that's when the Torah starts to letter Bet in that unique shape. Because there are questions you could ask, there are questions you could ponder, and there are things that are beyond us, and we are forbidden to ponder it. And that's why the Torah starts to letter Bet. That's the first answer. And the Midrash adds some more explanation, some more sources. It cites in Devarim, Deuteronomy. It talks about how you're supposed to investigate. You're supposed to ask about the early days. You're supposed to ponder everything that happened since the day one of creation. But what happened before that? That you're not supposed to ponder. You're supposed to look from one end of the world to the other end of the world. All that you should ponder and probe and investigate. But beyond that, you can't. That's very interesting. The shape of the letter Bet that starts the Torah, that teaches us this idea, says the Midrash. The Midrash offers a second answer. The Gematria system works in order. You start with the letter Aleph. That's one. And the letter Bet that's two. Says the Midrash, the description of creation must start with the letter Bet, because there were two creations. There's this world, and there's the world to come. And with the letter Bet, it's hinting to the duality of creation. This world and the next world. Okay, interesting. A third answer. The word bracha means blessing. Bracha, blessing. Brachos, blessings. It starts with letter Bet. The word, God forbid, for a curse, arur, starts with letter Aleph. Oh, you can't start with letter Aleph because that invokes cursing. You have to start with letter Bet, which invokes a blessing. This is all fascinating and very much a subject that we would not even recognize. We wouldn't even notice that this is something to ponder. And finally, Midrash says, the letter Aleph was not persuaded. The letter Aleph still wanted to go first. And for 26 generations, the letter Aleph was complaining, was filing its grievances with God. I'm the first letter. Why didn't you create the world with me? Why with the letter Bet? And God responded. The whole world was created for one purpose. It was all for the Torah. And thus, when the Torah was finally given to the world, that's the completion of Genesis. And how was the Torah given to the world? What was the initial conveyance of Torah from heaven? Of course, that's the Ten Commandments. And what's the first of the Ten Commandments? I am the Lord your God. And how do you say that in Hebrew? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Anochi, I am the Lord your God. Anochi begins with the letter Aleph. So for 26 generations, the letter Aleph is complaining. And God says, okay, you'll have your time in the limelight. The actual creation, the fulfillment of creation will indeed begin with you. Very fascinating. Again, this is not even the first word of the Torah. It's the first letter. And the commentaries suggest maybe a deeper insight into what's happening over here. Why is it preferable to create the world with letter Aleph? The letter Aleph, it's an amalgam of 3 different letters. This is an idea we've spoken about many times in the past. Some letters, most letters in fact, are composites. They're made up of other letters. The letter Aleph is a composite of 3 other letters. It has a diagonal Vav, and it has a Yud on top and a Yud on bottom. That's the shape of the letter Aleph. Now, what's the gematria of Vav plus Yud and Yud? Well, Yud is 10. Another Yud is another 10, so that's 20. And Vav is 6. 26. 26, as we know, the 4-letter name of God, the Yud, and then the Hey, and then the Vav and the Hey, that's 26. So the letter Aleph symbolizes God. The one description we have of God in the Torah is God is one. Echad begins with the letter Aleph. The deeper question of the Midrash is, why was the world not created with the clarity of the revelation of God? The letter Bet is 2. There's 2 paths. There's the ability to ignore God. There's the ability to live a whole life and not even once consider the fact that you were created. There are people like that who never pray, who never have episodes of faith, who never acknowledge that they are the handiwork of an all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent God. That's a possibility. There are 2 paths. There is an alternative to God. And of course, there's a reason for that. There are 2 worlds. If we did not have the letter Bet, the 2 options, so to speak, we would not have the possibility to earn the world to come. So there's a whole philosophical debate over here. Should the world be created with unimpeachable clarity of God or not? The letter Bet says no. The letter Aleph says yes. The world was created with the letter Bet. The sign of revelation, that's a recreation of the world, so to speak, with the letter Aleph. It's a revelation of God that's unimpeachable. And for 26 generations, the letter Aleph, this force, this concept of clarity, was desirous to have a revelation of God. A revelation of God that cannot be challenged. That's unimpeachable. After 26 generations, now, how does that work? 26 generations? 10 from Adam to Noah, 10 from Noah to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Kehas Amram Moshe. 26 generations. Now, if you do some clever math, you find something very interesting. If the first letter is the letter Bet, and for 26 generations, the letter Aleph is complaining, how many letters are there in the Hebrew alphabet? So you may say, well, there are 22 letters, and that would be correct, but not fully correct. And the reason why is because some letters are capitalized. Now, we know if it's a noun or if it's the first letter of a word that begins a sentence, there's certain letters that we capitalize when we write in English. But imagine there's capital letters not at the beginning of the letter, but at the end of the letter. Makes no sense, right? But that's how it works. Imagine. But it's not all the letters, it's only some of the letters. Only some of the letters. Which letters? The mem. A mem at the end of the letter is shaped differently. A nun, a tzaddik, a pei, and a chaf. Mansapach. Funny word. So there are actually 27 letters. So the commentaries explain the first generation was letter Bet. The second generation was letter Gimel. The third generation was letter Dalet, and so on. Further and further. 22 generations, you finish all the letters. And then you have 5 more. After 26 generations, you've gone from the letter Bet all the way to the end of the Mansapach. After that, you finally get the letter Aleph. You get the Anochi. Very interesting, profound insight. But for us, I think there's maybe a powerful lesson that we could take for ourselves from this idea. The letter Aleph is the highest level. That's the letter that represents God, the oneness of God, the unimpeachable clarity of revelation. And we don't start there. We start at a lower level, and then it goes even lower. There are successive degradations. You go further and further and further and further away from the Aleph. Gimel, the Dalet, the Hey, the Vav, the Zayin, and so on. You finish the whole alphabet, and then you have these extra letters. And then you're the furthest point away from the Aleph. After 26 generations of degradations from the lowest of the low, emerges the reclamation of the Aleph. This is a format that we see in many places in our history and in the Torah, that sometimes the point of absolute purity emerges from the most unexpected places. Abraham is the classic example of this. Where did he come from? His father, well, he was a Khan Yashanti, a Khan Asor, a purveyor of idolatry, who took his own son to be killed because of the crime of monotheism. How does Abraham emerge from Terach? It's a mystery. We don't understand how that works. There's no way that someone who changes the entire world, who brings light, illumination, spiritual vitality to the whole world, changes the entire trajectory of all of humanity, of all of created existence. How does such a beacon emerge from Terach? Sometimes out of the lowest of the low emerges the Aleph. The Talmud tells us Messiah will come in one of 2 generations. Either a generation that's entirely righteous or a generation that's entirely wicked. There's 2 ways to get to the Aleph. Either you earn the Aleph or you are so far from the Aleph. There's no connection at all to the Aleph. And with the total absence of light, you have a collapse of evil, a collapse of heresy, and a brilliant light of Aleph emerges. It's an idea that just from the first letter of the Torah, but let's continue. We have the creation of Adam. And Adam's created in chapter 1, but that's, of course, in the context of 6 days of Genesis. Chapter 2, we get a more expanded description of the creation of Adam. And we have a very puzzling verse, chapter 1, verse 26. Vayomer Elokim, God said, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. Well, who's us? God's the only creator. Now, of course, you go to the next verse, the verse says very clearly, God himself made Adam. But why does verse 26 say, Na'aseh, let us make man? In our image, in our likeness, and so on. So Rashi, of course, tells us that this is teaching us the humility of God. Why? Because man is similar to the angels. He's in the image of God and the image of angels. Whatever that means, we don't know. Again, it's a mystery. Entire books like this thick, very thick, 3-4 inches of very small letters to explain what it even means. What does it mean, the Tselem Elokim, the image of God? But there's some sort of overlap between man, humanity, and God, and the angels. So the angels have a horse in the race here. There's some sort of competition between humanity and the angels. And God thought it would be inappropriate to not consult with the angels before creating Adam. So Rashi is telling us, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. It's a discussion. It's a consultation that God had with the angels. Now, what did the angels say? Rashi doesn't tell us. What was their thoughts on this experiment, this bizarre experiment of a man, of a hybrid, of the lowest of the low with the highest of the high? What a crazy idea. So Rashi doesn't tell us. You open up the Midrash, we find a few different takes in the Midrash. One idea is that God consulted the angels, and the angels couldn't agree. There were different groups of angels, each advocating something else. Some angels said, create man, it's a good idea. Others angels said, don't create man, it's a terrible idea. The angel of kindness said, well, man, they have an attribute of kindness. They work together. There's collaboration amongst humanity. He's worthy to be created. And the angel of truth said, no, it's just full of lies. The whole creation of humanity is just a lie. It's an oxymoron. It's truth and falsehood mixed together. You can't create man. You ought not to create man. The angel of justice said, well, create man. He does justice. And the angel of peace said, don't create man. They just fight all the time. So the angels are having this big spirited debate, says the Midrash, about whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea to create man. And the Midrash concludes that while they're actually in the middle of their rancorous, strident debate, they're arguing, debating back and forth. It's like debate club. The Midrash says, like, these are arguing with these. There's a whole big, vigorous debate. God just creates man. And then God goes back to the angels. What are you arguing about? He's made already. It's too late. It's a fait accompli. That's what the Midrash says. Very striking, bizarre, strange Midrash. Because on one hand, we're told, well, God wants to consult the angels. The angels, they have skin in the game. It's important for them to have their opinion noted and expressed. And in the middle of the debate and the dialogue, God just goes off to the side, so to speak, and creates man. And goes back to the angels. Why are you debating? It's over. Man is here. The commentaries tell something very profound. Man, the creation of man, and of course when we say man, we mean mankind. Man is created amidst a very serious and unresolved debate. Whether this thing, this mixture of the highest of the high, the soul of man is way higher than the angels. And the lowest of the low, what a human could do physically with their body is worse than any animal. The amount of destruction, devastation, corruption, criminality, and evil that a man can do with their body is worse than any animal. This idea of this creation, it's a creation amidst a very serious and unresolved dispute. And it's important for us to know that, because again, the Torah is written for us. And we have to know this. It's important for us to know that there's a consultation and it was not resolved. And there's arguments on both sides. And it's a very, very good and persuasive argument to say, we should not exist. We should not exist. That's a legitimate take. And we have to walk around with that realization because it amplifies the riddle of human life. On one hand, we have to realize that our creation, our existence, it's the whole reason why the whole world's created. And everything hinges upon us. And we have the levers to effectuate all the change in all of the realms and dimensions and spheres. We have to walk around, the Hasidic masters say, with two teachings in either pocket. On one hand, we have to remember, Bishvili Nivra Holam, the world's created for me. Every person must say that. The entire world was created for mankind, and one person, a single person, can't fulfill the purpose of all of created existence. Now that really amplifies our value and our importance. And that's got to be a teaching in one pocket. And in the second pocket, we have to have a second teaching that says, Anochi, Afar, Va'efer, I am but dust and ashes. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. You tread upon me, not notice me. I'm the lowest of the low. And humanity, and the riddle of humanity, is the mix of those two sentiments. When I was reading this midrash, I was reminded of a fascinating teaching in the Talmud. The Talmud cites a debate, a multi-year debate between the academies of Shammai and Hillel. These were the two great academies of our people. And what was the content of this multi-year debate between these glorious institutions, these glorious academies? One side was arguing, Noach lo la'adam shelo nivra yoser mishenivra. It's better, it's preferable for a person to not have been created than to, yes, have been created. Are we better off existing or not? One side says yes, and one side says no. And that was not resolved after multiple years. We're getting here a picture of what our sages are telling us, what the Torah is telling us, what the Midrash is telling us is, it's not so simple whether or not it's a good idea for us to exist. There are very good arguments why we should exist and we can accomplish wonderful things. But of course, there's a grave danger. It's like a nuclear bomb in our hands. And when we are aware of that, the Torah tells us this, I think it gives us a very profound understanding of what we're supposed to do in our life. Because now we're here, like the Talmud there concludes. Talmud actually concludes, which is very surprising, it's better to not be created. But once we're here, we got to work very hard, make sure we do what we can to perfect ourselves, to refine ourselves, and to uplift the world. The duality of man appears in many places in our Parsha. In chapter 2, verse 7, we read about the creation of Adam. Again, now, a lot of people say, well, Adam's created twice. There must be multiple authors. It's such a silly, infantile reading of the Torah. Because, of course, as we mentioned, the first chapter is the creation of all of Genesis. And thenceforth, it's just focusing on Adam. So it's going to revisit some of the events of chapter 1 to be told in more greater detail. If you look at the creation of Adam in chapter 2, verse 7, it says that God, Hashem Elokim, God formed, Vayitzer, God formed, Es Ha'adam, the man, Afar min Adamo, dust from the ground, from the earth. And he blew into his nostrils the soul of life. Vayi ha'adam lenefesh chayim. Man became a living being. When you read this verse, you won't notice anything awry in the verse. But of course, Rashi and the Talmud and the Midrash, they don't miss anything. And they say, wait a minute, the word vayitzer means to craft or to form. It's like the word bara means to create, etz nihilo, something out of nothing, and the word yatzar or yitzer means to form something out of something else. So if you take a clod of dirt, of dust, and you form it into a body, that's vayitzer. That's to create in that form. But that is typically spelled with one letter yud. A yud, a tzaddik, and a resh. Like the word yetzer. In my book, I argued why the word yetzer hara for the evil inclination was called a yetzer hara. Why does it have that same term, that it forms something? But the word yetzer and yitzer is with one yud. Here it's spelled with two. Why is it spelled with two? And Rashi tells us that man is created twice. Man's got a good inclination, bad inclination. Man's created this world, the world to come. The same duality of man. The angels arguing it's a good idea. The angels arguing it's a terrible idea. Both of those are simultaneously true. And the word vayitzer, it's actually pronounced the same way as it would be if it had only one letter yud. The sages tell us that we are created. And there are vastly different ways that we can manifest our life, that we can choose to live our life. And we have to make a choice. At the very beginning of the Torah is creating that contrast. What do you want? Very powerful idea, very powerful insight. It's a little backstage in the Parsha. But let's go to the big episode, maybe the most puzzling episode in the whole Parsha. Adam, the handiwork of God. Eve, the handiwork of God. They're placed in the garden with only one instruction. You had one job. You had one job. Don't eat from this tree. Now, the amount of literature and commentaries that discuss what happened and how they could have done it, what they were thinking, it's endless. It's endless. So we can't cover it all. But let's try to get maybe a little bit of a deeper and more nuanced understanding of what happened over here. We have a serpent. Serpent, of course, is the embodiment of the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. And the serpent entered humanity afterwards, like the venom of the serpent, our sages tell us, that began to course within the veins of humanity after the sin. That's the Yetzer Hara that we have within us. We're trying to expunge so that we can go back to the garden. The serpent is seducing, is enticing Eve. And he tells her, you're not going to die. You eat from the tree, you're not going to die. Chapter 3, verse 5, because God knows that the day that you eat from the tree, your eyes will open and you will become like God. Yodei tov v'ra, knowing of good and evil. Now, what does it mean? What's the serpent telling Eve? You will become like God. So Rashi says two words that you read it, and this is the simple interpretation. Yotzrei olamos, creators of worlds. You eat from the tree, says Mr. Serpent. You eat from the tree, you'll become creators of worlds. Now, when we read that, we simply say, well, she was hoodwinked. She was tricked. She fell for it. He was a snake oil salesman. The snake was a snake oil salesman. A charlatan. And he just sold her a bag of goods, and she bought it hook, line, and sinker. That's what we say. The Talmud tells us there are three who said the truth and were destroyed. One of them is Doeg. Okay, put that aside. Doeg is a figure from the prophets, times of David. The spies who were sent to scout the land of Israel, they said the truth and they were destroyed from the world. And the Nachash and the serpent of Genesis, he told the truth and was destroyed. That's what Parshas tell us. When he told Eve that when you eat from the tree, your eyes will open, the verse actually says that their eyes opened, they realized they were naked. But then it says, you'll be like God, whatever that means, like Elohim, like a powerful one. The word Elohim doesn't always mean God. Rashi says, Yotzrei Olamas, you'll be creators of worlds. That wasn't a lie. That was the truth. He told the truth and was punished for it. How could that possibly be the truth? It seems obvious that he's trying to pull a fast one. So this is maybe one angle to the most perplexing maybe story in the whole Torah, this sin of Adam and Eve in the garden. Here's what we know. Before Adam and Eve's sin, they had no Yetzer Hara. They had no force within that was trying to encourage them, to provoke them, to goad them to sin. There was no mixture. There's no admixture of good and bad. The tree of knowledge is good and bad suddenly become commingled. That's the consequence of the sin. Before the sin, it was only good. Yes, there was the serpent, but from within it was only good. And thus, Parshas tell us, they do the sin, and suddenly the Yetzer Hara operates within them. The Yetzer Hara, that's a pretty nefarious foe. It's a pretty formidable enemy. And it's really hard to combat. And it has a nickname, as I mentioned earlier. It is the venom of the serpent. It's venom. You have venom and you need some anti-venom. You need an antidote. And the Talmud tells us there's only one antidote. There's only one antidote to the serpent's venom. And that is called Torah. Barasi Yetzer Hara, I created an evil inclination. Barasi la Torah tavlin. Torah is the antidote. So if you think about it, the serpent, by encouraging the sin, the serpent knew, maybe even Adam and Eve knew, that they would get a Yetzer Hara. And if there is this venom, there must be the antivenom. There must be some way to combat it. There must be an antidote. So with the sin, we have the insertion of the evil inclination. The only antidote of that is Torah. And that's the only way to remove or to even tame the venom of the serpent. So in effect, with the sin in the garden, humanity was assured that they will receive Torah. Now, what is included in Torah? There are 50 realms of wisdom, of insight. All of them. Moshe got 49 of them. Now, Moshe got all of Torah. But in Torah, there are only 49 realms of wisdom. The one realm of wisdom that is not included in the Torah is, as we mentioned earlier, it is the understanding, the complete understanding of God, of the infinite. God created the Torah, and thus everything that came subsequent is included in the Torah. But God himself, and that wisdom, if we're calling it because that's what the Talmud calls it, and the Ramban in his introduction to the Torah explains this idea, that's not included in the Torah. Now, of course, we know the Torah was used as a blueprint for everything that came subsequently. The first creation of God is his Torah. And everything that was created subsequently was created via the Torah that God created. If someone is a bearer of Torah, they are a bearer of the power that created the worlds. All subsequent creations are subservient to Torah and are included within it. Torah is the means through which God created the world. Anyone who's a bearer of Torah can do the same. When the angel told Eve, once you eat from this tree, you'll become a creator of worlds, he was telling the truth. Because you eat, you get the Yetzirah, you get Torah. Torah is the blueprint for creating worlds. Now you read this is the first Parsha. It gives us a very different perception of what Torah actually is. Now, the question we have to, of course, ponder, how indeed does Torah create the worlds? How do you do it? I want to engage in some world building. How do you do it? So I'll tell you how you do it. First of all, this is what the Mishnah says, so it's not up for debate. You do one mitzvah, you create an angel. It means that there's a creative exercise within Torah that you create an angel. That's part of building out a world, right? But here's the idea. I think it's a very powerful idea. And it's a bit of a scary idea, but a useful one to live a very robust and meaningful life. We are always in world building mode. Always. When someone dies, where do they go? They go to the world that they built in their lifetime. Everything that you do, every mitzvah that you have the great privilege of performing, every word of Torah that you study, every kindness, every charity, every mitzvah, every prayer, every act of devotion, every act of self-sacrifice, every overcoming of the Yetzer Hara, that is building worlds. We don't inhabit those worlds because we're in building mode. You die, which I hate to say it's going to happen to all of us. Forgive me for being the bearer of bad news. We're all going to have that. Where are we going? We're going to the next world. What's the next world? Then the next world is the world that has your signature in it. It's the world that you built with your Torah. Now, this may also sound fantastic to us, but I will tell you, it's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, in the future, God will bestow upon every righteous person 310 worlds. 310 worlds. Lehanchil leohavai yesh. The word yesh, it's a yud, it's a shin. That's shai olamas, 310 worlds. A shin is 300, the yud is 10. Every righteous person, the Mishnah tells us, will be deserving of 310 worlds. Now, one more very cool thing. God created man, and the word vayitzer is with two yuds. It's the Yetzer Tov, the Yetzer Hara. It's this world, it's the next world. There's an interesting comment in the Gaon of Vilna. How do you earn these worlds? It's with Torah, specifically the Torah used as an antidote to the Yetzer Hara. With your two forces that you have, one pulling you for good, one pulling you for bad, one pulling you to ignore the world to come, and one pulling you to encourage you to build that world, that's how you earn your 310 worlds. The Gaon of Vilna says that 300 of those 310 worlds are earned with overcoming the evil inclination. And 10 are with hearkening to the Yetzer Tov, to the good inclination. Oh, and by the way, Vayitzer, which is the word to form man, it's the Gematria 310. We're starting off the Torah again. We're in the book of Genesis, Parshas Bereishis. It's all very, very deep. And we're trying to go a little bit backstage to see those parts of the Parsha that maybe we would have missed. The deeper messages, the hidden, maybe even in plain sight, but hidden for us, the hidden elements and aspects and dimensions and realms of the Parsha. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast. We hope and we pray that we will succeed in recording a Parsha podcast, please God, every week this year. We really hope. It's every time it's a gift from the Almighty. So we hope, just as the Almighty has helped us to study the Holy Torah, multiple cycles without missing a single week, we hope that we can continue that streak this year in good health and in good spirits. From the Torch Center in Houston, Texas, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Now, we were recording this on Sunday, so you should have a wonderful rest of your festival. Please God, I will release it after the festival. So hopefully everyone, by the time you listen to this, you had a wonderful festival. Hopefully the hostages are all back home and all's well. We don't know what's going to happen. It's still up in the air. But we're back. It's the Parsha podcast. It's year 10. We're going backstage. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.